In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to create dimensions in the software. We will start by using the existing Vector widget project as a basis for showing the range of options and build up to what you see on the screen. It's worth noting that the level of dimensioning in this software is not intended to make a full drafting program, but more of a tool which can add value to the vectors to give you a quick overview of sizes, etc. before cutting on a CNC. So this is where we're going to be heading, but let's get a new file open and let's start from scratch so we can show you how we got there. So if we just go to File and Close. Okay, so let's go ahead and open an existing file. If we just click on the option over here, and if we just open our widget vector file from our tutorial files location. And now you'll see on screen that we have our Vectric widget without any dimensions ready for us to do our demonstration. So let's go over to the Drawing tab and first find our Dimensions tool. So if you go to Create Vectors, underneath Create Vectors, the very last option is Dimension, add dimensions to the 2D drawing. So let's go ahead and click that. As you can see, you're presented with a number of options: the length dimension, the vertical dimension, the horizontal dimension, the angle dimension, the arc dimension with a sub option to show diameter, the font to use either true type or single line font. You can also change the font type in here, so you can vary the font to your needs. You have a text height option where you can adjust the text height. You can vary the decimal places of your dimensions. You can use an offset for your leader. You can use custom text, which may actually come in handy where you're using something that may not be to scale and you need to write what the actual dimensions are in here, and you may be able to use this option in that scenario. And finally, we have place dimensions on a layer where you can place the specific dimensions onto their own layer. So for now, let's just close this form. Okay, let's look at a quick example before we move on to the actual Vectric widget and looking at dimensions there. So let's go back to our Create Vectors under our Drawing tab and click the Draw Line tool. Let's just zoom into the top left corner of the software. I'm just going to click roughly around here and around here to create my line, and then I'm just going to close out that form. Okay, so let's go back to our dimensions tool. In this scenario, we're interested in the length dimension. And I'm just going to hover my mouse pointer over the bottom of the line. Click on there with left click, go to the top of the line, left click on the top of the line. You notice this dialog box has appeared in pink, and you can place this wherever you like, but I'm just going to place it just about there. And you can see we've got a dimension of 2.05. That's great. And that shows the dimensions of this line, or the length of this line in this scenario. However, I think I would like to make some changes specifically to the text and also to the leaders here that are touching the line vector. I don't really want them to touch at the moment. So we can change this by coming back over to our form. And if we just hold Shift on our keyboard, click on our vectors, and you'll notice that the leaders have been selected along with the dimensions here. I'm just going to change this offset value over here. So let's just go up to 0.1, and you'll notice that immediately takes effect, and now we've got a gap of 0.1 from the original line that we drew. Similarly, if I want to change the offset to a larger amount, so if you go 0.2, you can see immediately that takes effect. Now you want to be careful where you place your actual dimensions here, because you want to make sure they're not overlapping onto other vectors on your sheet. So just make sure when you're playing around with some of these settings that you have plenty of room to display your vector for your dimensions nice and clear so they don't overlap on any of the parts. I'm just going to go ahead and make some other changes. I'm going to change my decimal points down to 2. I'm also going to change my text height just a little bit and go to 0.35 to make it a little bit clearer. And I'm also going to change that font to Arial. So we can just scroll up, or you can press A on the keyboard and just change that to Arial. And that looks a lot nicer. Okay, so for now, let's just go ahead and look at the custom text option as well. Now this might come in handy where, let's say, if you're going to make a project sheet that you need to hand to someone with the project dimensions, you can actually override the text that sits here and you can put a specific value. As I mentioned earlier, this may also come in handy when something is not quite to scale, but you need to write the correct dimensions anyway. So let's just go ahead and put in a value here. So I could write 2.30 in this scenario, and as you can see right away, it displays it here, and you can use some custom text. But for now, let's go ahead and close this form down. I'm just going to deselect the option to use custom text. Just going to close this down, and we're just going to delete these vectors as we move on to our widget. So let's just go ahead and click our vector and delete that one, and just click this one and delete that one. And let's just zoom our active view to the drawing limits. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the other options in the Dimensions tool that we can use on our Vectric widget here. So if you come back into the Dimensions tool, and I'm actually going to change the text height just a little bit. I'm going to change it down to 0.2. And I'm also going to change the offset down to 0.1 before we begin. So I'm going to keep it on the length dimension. And this time I'm actually going to hover it over to the right-hand side of our widget. And I'm going to hover my mouse pointer over the center of this circle here. And just click. And we're going to come down to the bottom and do the same in this circle at the bottom here. So hover over the center and left click. And we've got a dialog box. If we drag that off to the right-hand side and left click again, we have our dimensions of 6 inches. Now you may be thinking why I didn't use the vertical dimension in this scenario, but the length dimension will always come off perpendicular to the 2 points that you create. And we can see that over here again, for instance. So for example, if we go over to here and try and look at the theoretical intersections of these two lines here, so over here and over here. So if I just hover on this line with my mouse pointer, and if we bring the mouse pointer up, you'll see this line appear here. And we're going to do the same thing over here. So we're going to hover over this line, and we're just going to come to the intersection, which is just there, left click on there. And we're going to do the same thing at the top here. So we're going to come over to this line over here, and we can see that the line has appeared now. I'm just going to do the same thing from this side. So we're just going to slowly bring our mouse pointer over here, and we're going to meet that intersection, click on there, and we'll just bring out our dimensions dialog box, and there we are. So 2.38 on this one. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at our vertical dimension. So if I just go ahead and click that option to make it selected, and if we just zoom out to our active drawing limits, and if you recall, I could have used my vertical dimension here. But in this scenario, I'm actually going to use something a bit different. I'm actually going to look at the vertical dimension between this circle here and the edge, the bottom edge of this Vectric widget text logo over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click in the middle of this circle over here. And we're going to click in the bottom left corner of this Vectric widget box over here. And we've got our dialog now for our dimensions. I'm just going to bring that over here, and that comes to 2.12. Similarly, if I wanted to use the horizontal dimension, I could do this very similar option where I come over to the right hand side, and again we select the top right hand corner of the Vectric widget box, and we select the middle of this circle here. We'll get the horizontal dimension between the two, and let's just pop that up there as 2.63. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our angle dimension. So we're just going to go ahead and select our angle dimension over here, and we're going to come zoom into this left-hand side of the widget. I'm just going to click on this line here, click again on this line here, come up to our X orthogonal axis, click once more, and you'll notice that we've got this large circle now, which indicates the large angle, but we actually want the small angle. So we're just going to hover our mouse to the left-hand side here, and you'll notice we get the small angle. So if I click once more, I'll get the dimensions dialog box. Let's bring that up here. And there we are, we have 38 degrees. So let's move on to the arc dimension. So if I click this option here, you'll notice that the show diameter is actually already selected. I don't currently want the diameter, so I'm just going to unselect that, come over to this vector in the corner here, click on it, and this will give us our radius, which is 0.5. And if we just go ahead and zoom to our drawing limit, and this time we do select the diameter, and we come down to this bottom vector here, click on it, drag the dialog box out, click again, and we can see a diameter of 1. And similarly, if we come over to the very bottom arc here, if I click on this side of it here and bring the dimensions dialog box, click again, we have a diameter of 3.5. So as you can see, we're getting a good idea of some of the tools available to you using dimensions, such as the length dimension, vertical dimension, the horizontal dimension, angle dimension, arc dimension, and the various options that allow you to customize these dimensions to meet your needs. As such, this concludes this tutorial, but we look forward to seeing you in the next one.